I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Alexander Woods,
Here.
Michaela Conlon View, Casey Weiss,
Here.
Jeanette Simonson, Nick Helsted,
Here.
Iftikhar Memon,
Here.
and Caitlin Cunningham.
Here.
Alright, and has this meeting been properly verified? Public notice?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. We have no public comment tonight. Should do this.
So typically the board has a history of celebrating outgoing board members. So would you mute the, there you go, so Iftikhar, if you want to come forward.
Always wanted to ding your bell. So, congratulations.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
There you go. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, it was great joy working for the children and with the board and the teachers and everyone.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for your time. And so now, if you think anyone else is out of order tonight, you can ring the bell, all right? It's like a buzzer for the evening.
Alright, I would like to make a motion to move 7.1, focus on purpose, 6 through 8, grade social studies up in the order.
I'll second that, Marty.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alright,
If I could also add, Anton Cassidy is here to talk from the Student Senate, and I errantly did not put that item on the agenda. However, it's never an action item, it's just for discussion purposes, so I would appreciate him also moving to the top part.
yeah, you can go after the social studies teachers.
Fantastic.
Great, so you guys are up?
I think I was gonna make a motion to move the session
We have a presentation. So my name's Tony Berger. I am the PLC leader of the middle school social studies department, and I brought along some of my colleagues that will introduce themselves and then we'll begin.
Hi, I am Jess Saporito. I teach 6th grade social studies.
I'm Grace Schilling. I teach 7th grade social studies.
Jacob Rocco, I also teach 7th grade social studies.
And I'm Chase Brown, and I teach 8th grade social studies.
We also have Amy Axtell Adams, who teaches 6th grade social studies, and Nico Brando, who teaches 8th grade, and we're not able to be here tonight. So I'd like to share a few things with you about our social studies program and what we've been doing over the last few years. And then I want to get to the important people and have the teachers talk to you a little bit about what they do actually in their classes. So our curriculum has been fairly set in place. In 6th grade, they get an ancient civilizations, which includes everything from the earliest civilizations of Mesopotamia through China and Egypt and Rome, all the way up through the Renaissance. The 7th grade, the world cultures, has changed a little bit over the last few years. Originally, it had more of an emphasis on the United States, Canada, and Africa. We've expanded that quite a bit to include Asia, China, and some other places, which I'll let them talk about. And our 8th grade U.S. history is now a full survey. For several years, we were doing the first half of history of U.S. history, and 9th grade was doing the second half. They've decided to switch their sequence a little bit, so now their freshmen have world history, and that's because of the AP program that Mike Shepard's worked so hard to bring into that. So now we're doing a full survey of the United States history as well. For the last 4 years, we've been working hard on state standards, going through heat maps from the Ford exam, and trying to pick out what are really the most essential thing for our kids to know. And what we came up with was 8 standards that all of our social studies courses have, and they all have the same sets of skills that we work to spiral. So the 6th graders it's gonna look a little bit different than it does in 7th grade. It's gonna look even a little bit different in 8th grade. And these guys have worked really hard to do that. In addition, each grade has 1 to 3 extra standards for their individual course. I'll share with you here the next slide. These are the 8 that we all have in common. And that means that all of the grades for the first unit have geography, 2CM, use regions worldwide to analyze the role of population shifts in why places change over time. And the purpose of that is so when we meet as a PLC and we examine our summative assessments from the first unit test, we can see how all of our students performed 6 through 8. Again, we're asking different things of them, but we're all teaching the same standards at roughly the same time. You'll see there's 1 behavioral science standard. We included that one last year. We went back through the heat maps of the last board exam, and that one had 3 questions. So we thought, well, that's probably pretty important. We decided to include that. We have 1 econ standard, 1 geography, 3 history, and 2 political science standards. So those are the ones that are the most essential that we feel in social studies as a department. Our strategic learning objective, or our department goal for this year, we looked at the first round of iReady reading results, and we identified that the non-narrative, informational, non-fictional, informational text reading was an area that our students were not doing well in. Well, that's what we do, right? In social studies, our primary and secondary sources are informational text. So our department goal for this year is students will raise their score on an 8-part method assessment from their current baseline to wherever they are to an average of 3, which is proficient for us. And we recently went through our interval results and that tell us that it's working so far. If you go to the next slide, I'll explain just briefly, really briefly, what 8 parts is. It's a way to break down a document. For us, it's usually primary sources. So students look at who was the author, what was the place, what prior knowledge did they need, who was the audience, what is the intended purpose or reason, the main idea, and finally significance. By taking a couple of paragraphs from a primary source, this is what we work to pull these things out so that our students do get better at informational reading. And sometimes that's quite challenging to do. On the right is the rubric that we all use for doing that work. And students have approximately 1 of these in every unit. In addition to other kinds of reading that we do in writing, again, this is one thing that we all do in all of the classes. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road. We only test social studies Wisconsin Forward once in middle school, and it's in 8th grade. Our scores last year, we beat the state average. We had 58.1 of our students were proficient or advanced in our social studies. That just tells me that the work that these guys are doing and the work that we've done on the standards is helping, right? It's doing what we intended to do. Certainly not perfect, there's work to do, but I'm extremely proud of the people that are with me here tonight. They're the ones who made that happen. Strategic implementation. So every school in the district has a strategic implementation plan laid out with several different anchor statements. So they have to do with developing PLCs and then going through and doing that work that I mentioned with going through and finding what are going to be our guaranteed standards and then what are going to be our summative informatives and meeting about them. Well, this year we're on anchor statement 4, which is what do we do with the kids that do get it? How do we continue to challenge them in our classes? So what this one does is it asks us to look at high quality sources. Those are going to be sources that are going to be tied to the Wisconsin state standards and are going to push our kids beyond what they've done. What this also does is it gives our teachers time to work with the students that require additional teaching. So they can be working with those students and our other students are not getting an extra worksheet to do or an extra article to read. They're actually going to get things that are going to challenge them and push them. And that's kind of where we've been working. A lot of our work has gone this year. We are also working a lot on project-based learning. We've been working with CESA 4 this year on their Liftoffs initiative, which is increasing student engagement. One of the ways to increase student engagement is through project-based learning. And that's a little bit different than just saying working on a project or cooperative learning. Students are presented with a real world problem and have to come up with solutions. They're required to collaborate, develop ideas. They have to use hands-on, and they have to come up with a solution to that problem, which they then present to their classmates. Research shows that this does increase student engagement and interest in class, and we've seen some of that already. So we're gonna all have done a project-based learning unit or series of lessons by the end of this school year. So this is something that we will continue to work on next year. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Jess and let her talk a little bit about what 6th grade's doing.
Thank you. So for 6th grade, they are learning about prehistory to the Renaissance. So in 6th grade, they really focus on Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient India and China, and then we go into Greece, and then currently we are in Rome, and then they will wrap up the year with the Middle Ages, medieval times, and the Renaissance. So I want to take this opportunity to look at an individual lesson that the students did. So this was a virtual reality exploration experience of the Great Wall of China. And the reason why we were doing this VR experience was to focus on the relationship between humans and the environment and the impact that they have, specifically focusing on engineering, culture, geography, and just the focus on how humans impacted ancient China and the events and things that we can still see today. So if you take a look at the next slide, you'll be able to see our students who are in the virtual reality, and then you'll be able to see the tablet, which I am currently, or was at the time, holding. So that is what the students are seeing. And so what they are looking at is the Great Wall of China. And some of the comments they said were, wow, I feel like I really am standing on the Great Wall of China. I can see miles away. I can see where the arrows were shot through. That's where the smoke tower is that helps the emperor, and just making a lot of really great connections from what we have learned in class to this interactive experience. And so, wrapping up this school year, we're going to be finishing up our Rome unit this week, where this last unit we focused on the Punic Wars, and we're able to dig deep into the death of Julius Caesar with a CSI investigation. We have been also using character chatbots so that students can talk to ancient people such as Julius Caesar, and then they would be able to respond back as that person so that the students can ask questions that they have and be able to learn more in depth about that person. And then we're going to be going into the Middle Ages, focusing on things like the bubonic plague, crusades, and feudalism, and we'll be wrapping up this year with the Renaissance, and that is where we're going to be having our project-based unit. And that is going to be focusing on art and artists, social classes, the printing press, scientific inquiry, humanism, and many other things. So that is our 6th grade social studies.
Do you want to start us off?
Yeah. 7th grade, we are focusing on world cultures, and the way we've kind of built this, each unit for this year is focusing on how culture changes in response to different catalysts. The main one we're looking at, we're exploring kind of the transition from prior to European contact in all these places, native North America, Central America, Oceania, which is Australia, New Zealand, and all the islands in the Pacific Ocean, Africa, and Asia, focusing on what was culture like prior to European contact, how did it develop, how did it change with European contact, and how has it continued to change over time? How has this globalization that occurred in the 14, 15, 1600s impacted culture over time? Our first unit is Native North American culture groups. We focus there, I think, for obvious reasons, and we do a deep dive 1 to 2 weeks in Ho-Chunk history, looking at things that are relevant to all of our students here. Central America focus on how the people interacted with their environments. and the role that geography plays in the rise and fall of civilizations. With the Aboriginal Australians, Maori, and the Pacific Islanders, they're looking at individual countries. What, again, caused these cultures to change? How have they developed over time? And again, focusing on the role of geography. African empires and colonies, digging into an area of history that a lot of people don't know a lot about. And then we have just started and are getting into our unit on Asia. We made this slideshow a little bit ago. We have finished our Africa unit. Finished up, each table group was assigned one of 4 countries that had different experiences prior to, during, and post the colonial experience, just to do a comparison across different countries. How did these countries, one was never colonized, one had a rather peaceful transition, and 2 with slightly more violent transitions. Why did one go one way versus the other? If you want to.
Sure. Oh, sorry. There's a lot of slides here, so we can feel free to skip through anything. But our upcoming unit, the unit we just started this past couple of weeks, is our Asia unit. And this one we're dealing a little bit differently. We're talking about resources and how it determines where people live. We all know the things that are around us impact how we live our lives. So we focus on the way that lifestyles change throughout Asia. Asia is a large continent, and there are lots of different kinds of landscapes. This is going to wrap up towards the end of our year with the students making fast food menus, where they take like American fast food restaurants and they have to adapt them to the cultures in Asia. So that's a really cool project for them. We can go through the next couple slides pretty quickly. These are some examples from the last year. So they had to take, what could I use that would be a similar menu item, but for an Asian country, because culture is quite different there. You can just kind of click through these. These are just some examples from our kids from last year. And then we'll pass.
Hi, so we have 8th grade U.S. history. We start off with prehistory, so we spent the first 2 to 3 weeks kind of talking about like people that were here before European arrival, then went to age of exploration, exploring not only just the United States but also North and South America in general, into English settlements, Revolutionary War, Bill of Rights, westward expansion, and Native American removal were tied together. Industrialization and Civil War. These units are a little bit shorter because we want to try to cover the whole, as much of the United States history as we can throughout a year. One of the activities, I want to show you just some of the activities we did. One of the more effective ones we did this year was our Socratic seminar. Our standard was to investigate the components of responsible citizenship. And in this activity, students were given the opportunity to teach their classmates about one of the topics related to the Bill of Rights. We broke down each part of the 10 amendments, gave students questions to research. And throughout this, students were able to kind of develop an understanding of what each amendment really means to them and how that gives them the freedoms and the rights they have today. Another activity we did, this was a little bit more recent, this was in our Civil War unit. The 2 standards we were looking at was evaluating government decisions and their impacts on individuals, businesses, markets, and resources, and then using historical evidence to determine cause and effect. Our purpose in this was for students to help understand that there was a lot of causes that was going to lead us to a civil war way prior to 1850 and 1860 and the election of Lincoln. And this really gave them the opportunity to kind of visualize and represent these differences, which I think really helped them understand that the U.S. was kind of set for this path for a really long time. If you go forward here, I know the lights are on, it's probably a little bit hard to see, but I just want to show off some of the student work, some of the really creative presentations. If you look, it's the poster is supposed to be designed in half, the top half being representing the industrial north, right? How the north industrialized much faster than the south. There's factories, people working there, versus in the south where it was relying on slave labor, and that showed that these 2 sides were bound for a collision course. Coming up, we have already finished up our project-based learning unit, the Progressive Era, looking at changes that happened in the United States between like 1880 and the 1920s. We're finished up World War I, and we're just starting the Great Depression this last few weeks. We'll get to World War II, and then maybe even one more unit after that.
I didn't mention that I don't teach in the classroom currently anymore. I did for several years at the high school, but as an instructional coach, I'm in all their rooms on a regular basis. And they are fantastic young staff. I'm definitely the outlier. You take that out and they're a young, energetic, passionate crew, which I really enjoy working with. So thank you for your time. And do you have any questions at all for anybody on our team here? Yeah.
I have a question. If you guys had a magic wand and could have any resources, any staff, any time, anything you needed with no real world restrictions whatsoever, purely hypothetical, what would you want?
I'll let them answer that.
I think one thing that would be really cool to be able to do in the social studies department is to have more cultural speakers. We have the opportunity to do that with the Ho Chunk Nation periodically as a more local cultural group, but being able to get resources for presentations, any sort of, even if it's not live, being able to have that kind of opportunity in social studies just to give them more exposure to the world that they are going to grow up and interact with.
I think if I had the magic wand, I would make class sizes smaller, because that way when we're having these lively discussions, that more comments are made from the students. Because sometimes students in larger class size can sit back and hear things from their peers, but in a smaller class size, there is more of that interaction level. And I think with some of the things that they are learning about, that it's quite helpful to be in a smaller class size.
I think for me, just the opportunity to be able to get out of the building more often. There's a lot of resources that I'm looking to hopefully explore where we can maybe get outside of school and do some learning in some sort of field trip type setting. That would be like the biggest thing that I would want to do for next year.
These guys that had all the really good ideas. The thing that I appreciate the most, I think, as a social studies teacher, is the Discovery Ed tech book and all the sources that it gives us. It provides us with primary sources and secondary sources. It also has a really, really helpful atlas and map that we can use for the kids to get a look at what the geography coming from the 7th grade actually looks like. Because it's hard to point at a map on a wall and be like, this is what you're talking about. But when the kids can actually like zoom in and look at where are the rivers, where are the cities, that kind of thing, that's very helpful for them.
Any other questions from the board? Just a reminder to the board, the group was scheduled to be here in February, and that's when we had our massive snowstorm, and so that's why we're a month off. And you accepted Tony Berger's retirement of 32 years. So while he's here, perhaps we could give him some congratulations and appreciation as well. Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, there was a DPI result, you put it here for 8 middle school.
Yep.
Could you please place that slide? This is an excellent, this is an excellent percentage, 59, kind of 58, 59% proficient. This is 2024.
Right, this would be last spring's result. And we just got done last week taking
So I see that you have the state report card in front of you, Iftikhar. Just a reminder that neither science nor social studies.
This is social studies.
Correct.
Yes. So this is an amazing achievement in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think, the going through the heat maps, the time that we spent spiraling the skills, the work that 6th and 7th grade does, because they're not being tested, right? To support the students when they get to 8th grade says a lot about the work that those people do to get them ready.
And I have one last question for this lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to deliver a presentation on Indus Valley civilization because I am from Mohenjo-daro, from Indus Valley civilization. We survived, some of us. I used to deliver a presentation in Alison Berger's classroom. There used to be a 28 to 32 student. It was a big classroom. we do not have any school policy where we could have a ratio, one teacher to how many students. Hopefully, board members in the futures will make a policy about the ratio, one teacher and 20 students or 15 students. I like what you said. Thanks.
Thank you.
I was just pointing out that the science and social studies are not reflected on the state report card, which is really unfortunate for our district because our science and social studies are at or above the state average, but they're not reflected on the state report card. It's just math and ELA that are on that state report card. So that's all I was going to point out.
Yeah, but I was talking about also ratio.
Yep.
We don't have policy.
We don't.
Hopefully, the board members will make it in the future. Thanks.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Anton, wanna give the student senate report?
Don't have as long of a one I gave last time, up to as much. But good evening, I'm Anton, I'm a senior and president of the Student Senate. This year we have our 5 officers, myself, Owen Zenz as vice president, Andrea Cogwell as treasurer, Bailey Goldsmith as secretary, and Lauren Herkey as our communications officer. And then we have a total of 35 consistent members right now. They each come from different advising, so we get opinions from the whole school, and just to see what grades are thinking, what sections are thinking within the school. They bring up these issues, they hear from their classmates, and they just really represent their advising for these meetings. We started the year working out pretty strong. We were working on building school spirit. We did some spirit weeks through Christmas, Halloween, and right before winter break, dress up days, some events here and there. Then we do some fundraising. We had our penny war to raise over $300, like $334, I want to say, for a family in a medical emergency. And then we had, we just kind of promoted Salvation Bell ringing for, people in need over that winter. Moving on for right now, we're kind of working on trying to get another big project in by the end of the year. We're still in the brainstorming phase, so I can't really say what exactly. We have some ideas, but it's been hard to get the ball rolling. It's end of the year, people don't want to do as much. And then working on probably planning out for next year. I'm not sure how clubs are going to work, but I want to help my current officers be ready for next year where they have to do meetings differently with that semester schedule. That's really all I have for Student Senate. So thanks for your time.
Thanks, Anthony. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Alright, moving on to 6.1, gifts and grants.
All right, we are excited to accept a grant for $1,000 from the Children's Wisconsin. It is a grant that was available for student applicants, and hopefully you took a moment to watch the video that our middle school students put together with Amy Zadnikar. And they are excited to use that grant to supplement some of the outdoor activities on the middle school playground. So it's not large enough that it needs your approval. I just wanted you to be aware.
Alright, then moving on to 6.2, oath of office for elected board members.
Okay,
Can we meet that again?
so I have the oath of office here. Adam, you're first. I'm gonna have you read this yourself rather than repeating after me. And then once you have taken the oath, you'll need to sign this, and then I will give this to you. Right?
Right.
Right.
I'm just playing photographer, so you
Oh,
can
good.
go
And you have-
come front and center.
There you go.
Would you mind going up front? There you go. Usually you stand with them, so there's somebody else in the picture. I mean, do what you want, but
Pick the
that's
wrong
what
person to be in
does
the picture with you. So.
If he comes going. I, Adam Bantel, having been duly elected to the office of the Board of Education of the School District of Black River Falls, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and the School Board Member Code of Ethics, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
You need to sign this on a hard surface. Right. And then I give you, in theory, your expectations for behavior and code of conduct.
Thank you.
And Dr. Susie, you are next. Now I know I need to stand here. I did not know that before. Preemptively do that.
Okay. I, Jesse Souza, having been duly elected to the office of the Board of Education of the School District of Black River Falls, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and the School Board Member Code of Ethics, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God. Thank you.
And there's the code of conduct and ethics. Go board.
Thank you.
Quality clerking is what that is.
Caught on camera.
Good to finally see you do something.
Alright, next on the agenda is 6.3, review board policy 0144.5, board member behavior, communication, and code of conduct and ethics.
So this item, has been on the board core agenda for April, and my personal opinion is that if it is really meant to onboard our new members and have a conversation with the sitting board, feels to me like it should probably move to May so that they are at the table as opposed to the month that they take their oath and then go sit elsewhere. May is the month where the board usually approves the core agenda for the year. That would just be my suggestion, that we move this back a month. We can certainly talk about it both times if you'd prefer.
Yeah, so I was gonna make a motion to move it.
I second it.
Alright, we have a motion and a second. Any further debate? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor of moving the board agenda or board code of ethics to May rather than April, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Alright, then moving on to 6.
Shelly, will you, the core agenda, will you make that change for the future? Do we need to-
I will make it, and then you're gonna approve the whole core agenda again. Yep.
6.4, CISA 4 annual meeting board representation. CISA Goer is not here tonight.
Do you know if she's planning to attend?
I don't know, so Michaela Conlon-View is the elected representative to CISA 4's board. This is different than that. I happen to know that Mr. Bantel has expressed a willingness and availability if the board is interested in appointing him to go. He's already told me that he's available, or if there's somebody else that is interested in going. But it doesn't have to be the CISA board member. It is the annual meeting in which every district gets to elect someone. Not every district has somebody on their board of directors.
So if Michaela chooses to attend, she can still attend the meeting?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
I guess we,
So without
is
her,
it one person gonna go to it or how does it work?
So the CISA board will be seated during the annual meeting, and then the 26 school districts that our CISA 4 represents, they each get to have a nominated person. So Michaela and one other member could both be there.
Okay, so I guess we'll figure that out between now and the meeting then.
I
So
think we got to vote now.
that they want us to,
Yeah,
we
gotta
have to
talk
fill out a
about
form that says who are we sending, so if,
So I will make a motion for the newly elected Adam Bantel to represent us.
Second.
That's just like that, huh?
Yep.
voluntold.
Alright, to vote on it then, we have a motion to send Adam Bantel to the CISA 4 annual meeting, board representation. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passed. 7.2, employment recommendations.
So those are all of the resignations. There's one additional one that came in today. You're right, Marty's not up there.
Right, I didn't, since it was so recent.
We also would like to add John Bender onto the resignations and ask for your approval of that resignation as well.
Sure. I'll move to approve the employment recommendations for April.
With the addition?
The addition to John Bender as a resignee, I guess.
I'll second that.
Any debate? All those in favor of the employment recommendations, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Alright, moving on to 8.1, student success report, durable skills.
So I'm going to be, Brandon, do you mind just going back to that very first slide of that? Thank you. So in the previous presentation from the social studies department, they referenced liftoffs. So I just want to make sure that we all have an understanding that liftoffs is an area of focus for our teachers, our professional development, our instructional coaching. It's the work of our guiding coalitions and our PLCs. So we're doing a lot with this kind of branding this year. And so it has 4 main areas, which is personal. I won't read them to you, but it has these 4 main areas. And you can focus in on specific areas, or we also can know that they intertwine and we talk about them interchangeably, or they impact one another. For today, what I'd really like to talk about is durable skills. And if you think back to those presentations from their social studies teachers, they were talking about these projects that they have kids doing, which sounds great, right? And so then I want you to put yourself back in middle school working on a project and think about what you need in order to be successful with a group of people doing a project. You're gonna need things like communication skills. You're gonna need some tolerance for what other people are doing. You're gonna need some ability to set a goal and get a task and get it done kind of thing. And so those are the things that we're really focusing on with the durable skills. So Brandon, can we go 2 more slides forward, please? So what we're really trying to get at is this increase in student engagement, but still teaching to these high levels of academic standards. And then for today, I wanted you to have the whole background, is why I included all the information for all these different areas in your packet, but I'd really like to go to slide 14 now and think about just the durable skills. And so what you'll be seeing as we have our different teacher groups come in is that we're really focused on this project-based learning, which was leading to this increased engagement that we're learning at a high level. But it's also a place where we have to ensure that we're thinking about how we communicate with one another, how we regulate our emotions and all those things. So the handout that I gave you is a listing of the skills that have really been called out in the larger pilot in our area as the most essential skills. So this is not new stuff. This is the stuff that teachers have been working on since they've had groups of students in front of them. This is a way of really putting our focus on and a language around this work so that we can zero in on what's important. And so we know this is a slide that I've shared before, and that we have students in any group. And right now we have various degrees of people withdrawing into other topics. Some people are participating and looking at the slideshow. Some people are actively investing themselves and thinking about that next step of how we can move forward in this work. And so then into the next slides. This is just a little bit more differentiating between what it means to just participate. I think you can probably imagine yourself as a student and just participating and that lovely feeling of just taking notes, your brain can kind of wander. Or versus when you're really into what you're learning because you know it matters, and that when you're investing in it, or you're working with others and really driving how that learning is moving forward. And so when we're in those higher levels and investing and driving, we're gonna learn it longer. We're gonna keep that learning with us, and that's what we want for our students. We don't wanna just teach to a test, right? We want them to have these skills that they're going to endure into the workplace, into a future college and beyond. So the next slide. So I just wanted to emphasize this is how we're getting there through different learning activities. And then the next slide, different projects. We're engaging in this and that kind of that project-based mode. Now, not all of our work is going to be project-based. That's not what I'm saying at all. You heard Tony say that we're going to step into this one project. Some standards and some learnings don't lend themselves to this mode, but it's a matter of variety and really identifying which one of our standards is best learned through these concepts. And so then into our next slide. This is just a visual of what you have in front of you. And so we've had different teams take a look at this and think about, in my classroom, what is one problem that could be solved tomorrow by an increase in one of these areas? So like you might see like persist through a challenge. When stuff gets hard, we're gonna work on being able to keep going, like that type of a thing. And so different groups of teachers have been working with CESA 4 or with our instructional coaches on these durable skills and thinking about how can this look in my room from a kindergarten student all the way through to high school. And so this idea of a durable skill, we have kids that come with us with different dispositions, different tendencies towards being able to tolerate different experiences in school. And then we have kids with those different dispositions that have different experiences at home or in the community that help them develop skills and have the knowledge that they need to succeed. And so for students that come with different dispositions or those different skills or different knowledge bases, we need to step in the classroom and help all of our students so that they have the full package of what they need to learn in these different modes. And so on the next slide, it's just how we do it. So it's not going to be like a package program where I get to get my teacher's manual, right? And I can march through that. Instead, it's being really explicit about what I'm teaching. I'm going to teach my students specific concepts and specific ideas. I, as the teacher, am going to model and practice that with them. And then I'm going to notice it in real time. And that transfer is that's how we do with those of us that are parents in the room. That's what we do when we notice right away in the moment, give our kids feedback about the behaviors that we want to see and the behaviors that we don't. And so it's that type of thing. And again, this is nothing new. It's just an area of focus for how we're going about talking about this type of work. And then one more piece. And this slide just conceptualizes that idea that at the bottom, we're going to give that knowledge. Then we're going to practice it and model it, and hopefully that leads to a disposition where we have a student that is a communicator, that has that full skill, or that has that resilience that we're looking for. Then we can just go forward a little bit further. This is just deeper dive into that idea. And one more, please. And this is just a further breakdown for your viewing pleasure, exactly what we mean by that modeling and practicing and how we can get to it. And I'm showing you this not to have you read through each piece of this rubric, but to see the level of depth and understanding that we're really trying to get at with throughout our system. And there's just one more of these. And all of this, so what's really started us on this journey is we were thinking about AI, and you heard some of the uses in those projects about how do we engage with AI responsibly and safely with our students, right? And what we've learned is that the number one thing that we have and what we bring to students is our humanity as humans. It's a humans first always. Sometimes AI can be a tool. We want to be conscientious of the safety precautions around it and the long-term, the outside usage of it. But it can be one of the things that help us be more efficient in this work. Any questions?
So can you talk to us a little bit? We've had some conversation that on the report card, not only do students get an academic grade for their coursework, but there is also a scoring, and right now we use our PBIS language, be responsible, be respectful, be safe. We're having some conversations about how much more incredibly descriptive some of these words are than responsible, respectful, and safety, particularly when you're talking about what it looks like at Forest Street versus middle school versus high school, right? And so when you look at this list of skills, for those of you that have been around education and the CTE areas, you think these are job skills. These are all of those things that when we meet with our business partners, they say, this is the stuff we want our kids to have more of. And sometimes we can embed it into the academic work, and sometimes giving feedback on these traits outside of the academic work is also very helpful. And so the building leadership teams are each having conversations about which ones make the most sense for them to report out to families on at their level, so that parents get a more clear picture of some of these durable skills and their child's abilities, growth, or lack thereof in those areas, as opposed to the more broad, respectful, responsible, and safety that are currently on those report cards.
I just have one little, I'm sorry to take time, but I just have one more thing I want to share with you. So as we're talking about this, one of the things that we're really zeroing in on is, for example, in a math room, a teacher may be working with a group of students, and while she's right there, they're able to solve the problems. And then when the teacher walks away, or they're given the test, they're not able to solve those same problems. And so what we really think we're seeing is some of that the resilience needed, or the questioning needed, or the confidence, some of those durable skills are some of the times the missing link between what we're seeing in the classroom when they're in front of us to what we see students able to do down the road. And so there's a lot of implications for this work beyond just the, there's a lot of implications for this work. Thank you.
Back for 8.2.
I'm back.
Just turn around.
Yeah, I don't know what next. Just sharing. All right, so the next thing that we're asking the board is that we have a listing of students who
I'm sorry, just a moment. The first document is just background information for them. The next document was the chart of, there you go. Nope, that looks like the CISA contract, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
is that not? I can't see. Oh, that is it. That is it. Sorry. Can't see from this angle.
So this is a listing of courses that students have applied to take for early college credit and start college now. What's significant about this programming is that students are able to earn college credit at a significantly reduced rate than what they would post-graduation. The admin team at the high school works to ensure that these courses are not a duplicate of offering that we have at the high school. So these are all courses that expand the students' ability to take courses above and beyond what they could at the high school and for that college credit.
And just a reminder, there's the third way that students earn an awful lot of college credits while they're in high school, and those are through the articulated classes where our teachers are teaching technical college courses. They've got their master's degree in that area, and they have worked with the university, the college, whether it's Western Tech or Chippewa Valley Tech, to align the curriculum that our high school students take classes in our high school, and if they're successful, they get those credits. These are the two separate programs that the state requires all schools to engage in.
And so we are asking for approval of these courses from the board.
And I'm sorry to keep adding on, but I just want you to get the full picture. This is the type of thing that we keep talking about, that if our budget remains as tight as it is, the state says that we must support up to 18 credits. We currently, in the past, we have not capped students at 18, so if they had additional courses that fit into their career pathway that weren't duplicates of courses that we offer at the high school, we would allow them to continue taking those courses. As our budget gets tighter and tighter, we have started to reduce those opportunities. The College Transfer Academy is still outside of both of these programs, and that one, Mrs. Penza can certainly talk to the significant reductions that we've made in allowing kids to participate in that College Transfer Academy, because those range depending on which transfer academy, the health sciences versus the automotive versus the there was a firefighter, there was a whole bunch of different ones. Some of them are 12,000 a student, some of them are 20,000 a student. And so we've had to create some criteria for kids to be able to participate in those because our budgets are finite and we can't always say yes. So I just wanted to point out that these opportunities that you're approving, all students are entitled to 18 credits per state statute. Anything above that is a district's choice to provide for them.
I make a motion to approve this list of courses as an acceptable use.
Alex, I just have one question.
Sure.
Yeah. Could you go on this paper? Yes. It was there before, right?
Yes, it's gonna take me just a second.
If you tell me where you're looking, I have the
Okay,
document
this
as well.
guy.
Yep. Which part are you looking at?
Page 2.
Yeah.
It says eligibility grades 9 to 12, and next to it 11 to 12.
Right.
Why there is some difference?
Because those are two separate programs. So the early college credit program, state says students 9 through 12 can participate.
Yeah.
Start College Now is only for juniors and seniors per the state rules.
For the state rules,
Yep.
right? Yeah. The law says here, but I couldn't pull it out on internet. So these are two different criterias.
Two different programs that kind of run parallel to each other.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
I will second Alex's motion.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further debate? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to 8.3, the IAA annual meeting resolution.
If anyone has any questions about any of those, otherwise we send Andy Asegard, our activities director, to that annual meeting and he votes on our behalf. It has been part of the core agenda just in case there's topics or resolutions that are being promoted that our board has strong feelings about, that we would then talk to Mr. Asegard before he goes to vote on our behalf. But as a district, we get one vote, and so we have empowered Andy to make those unless, again, there's a topic that the board feels strongly about.
You don't have to approve it, but so. Any discussion? None. All right. Seeing none, we move on to 8.4, CISA contract.
Sure. So this is our formal contract for the 26-27 school year with CISA number 4. I hope you found it helpful. I included a historical comparison so that you can see what our costs have been over the last couple of years. Where the most significant expenses differ are on those bottom chunk that are, if you could make it just a little bit bigger, please, Brandon. Thank you. You can see the bottom ones: educational audiology, hearing impairment, vision impairment, physical therapy, orientation and mobility. Those are the ones that have the greatest variance from year to year. Those units that we buy are directly linked to students that we have enrolled in our school. And so when we have a special education student that is hearing impaired, you can see that our costs go up significantly. So last year it was $58,000. This year that student is being educated off-site here, and so we are no longer paying CISA services for those. So those are not very flexible. We can't say, no, thank you, we don't want to buy those services, because per the student's IEP, they have those services that are required. Many of the other things on top are, like Dr. Sullivan just talked about, the lift-offs. That is part of our contract here that we pay for. They've helped train all of our guiding coalitions. There was a note for this year that we have hired our LMC services through CISA for 20 days a year, and so you can see library, media, specialist support services have been included. Their person that we've been using the last couple of years is retiring from CISA, but is going to direct contract with us for the same number of 20 days, and it's less expensive for us, so that's a win-win for us. So. This is also like my professional network, all the superintendent group of the 26. There's a Nicole, the curriculum and instruction people have a group, as well as the directors of special education and pupil services all have a professional organization. Those are all included here. Plus there's principal networks, principal coaching, all of that stuff. So lots of leadership that comes out of that group.
I have a question.
Yes.
Which is that we have if you go back to the previous chart, there is basically an awesome list of services. We're not in the position easily to know which of these are worth it and which of these are not worth it. And I know you have been making decisions based on what is and isn't worth it. So this is sort of the magic wand question again. Are there things on this list you wish you could check? Or have you really, we took everything we wanted and left the what?
Sure. That's an interesting perspective, and I would just tilt it just a little bit. When you think of our region of 26 school districts, there are entire school districts of 400 students. And so they have to buy a lot of services because they don't have a person, right? Like we have a director of curriculum and instruction, so we're not buying curriculum services from them. We have a director of business services, whereas a lot of people are contracting for those business services through them. We have, I always get them mixed up, physical therapy. We buy physical therapy, but a few years ago we started contracting for so much occupational therapy, we said, we're just gonna hire the person. So we now have the occupational therapy who's our employee. A smaller school district like Alma Center could never afford to hire their own OT person because they just need that much of that person, right? So the itinerant services that are hired out through CISA, they will sometimes work in 5 different school districts. We have 2 school psychs. I know that they have a school psych who works in 3 small school districts. So our size dictates that we don't necessarily need to contract for some of those services because we're large enough to hire our own person for them. The areas that we do lean on them are for collaboration outside of our school district. So like our school improvement services, Nicole goes and is able to line up our school improvement plans with the school improvement plans throughout the rest of our region and make sure all the best ideas are rising to the top, right? So I would say magic wand, there's not a ton that we would want to buy, except when we get to the budget recommendation, you're going to hear a recommendation of an area that we want to stop buying services, coaching, teacher coaching from them, and we'd like to bring on our own coach that we'll talk about when we get to the math. So I feel like this is where we invest our dollars when we identify a problem. So this is our initial blush at the contract. CISA uses this so that they know how many people they have to employ for next year, but it happens often. Either a new student will move in throughout the year and we end up having to hire more itinerant services because of special education needs. So this will go up throughout the year. There might be a new teacher that comes in that's just got a burning passion for this topic and they're the only one in our district. Well, we'll connect them to a network of other people with that same burning passion through CISA. So it does change a little bit based off of the needs, but our liftoffs work is probably our newest big endeavor with them, and it comes with in-district coaching as well as all the professional development. So that's been a really, really nice addition for us. So that was a really long answer to your question, but it's not like we are wanting for a lot because we hire a lot. We use them much more as a consulting basis than we do for direct services, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. But I guess what I meant is there's trainings in here.
Yeah,
there's a lot
sure.
of trainings
Oh, yeah.
in here.
And so, like, because we joined that Liftoffs, they will send out a flyer that there's a student engagement professional development day. If you are part of the Liftoffs, it's free for 8 of your teachers. If you're not part of the Liftoffs, it's $250 per year for this training. So because we joined some of these collaborative groups, that entitles us to training throughout the year. So that price for Liftoffs, I'm gonna look at what it is so I don't misquote it, it's $15,000 this year. That includes their whole team. I think there's 5 of them come to our district 2 full days and go into classrooms and work with teachers on observations and feedback and all of that stuff. And so if we want more of that, we can augment that contract with a day-to-day service throughout next year. So this is the biggest chunk of it because they need to know for their staffing, but there's always a little wiggle room throughout the year. Okay. Yeah. And that one does need your approval.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
But it's you got the bell. You need to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve this.
I second.
All right, a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Right, moving on to the 8.5 truancy process in Jackson County updates.
Sure. So I wanted to share with you some just conversations that are happening around the communities, because as board members representing the district, I want you to be aware some of the levers that I'm pushing and pulling, trying to change the way Jackson County approaches truancy. What you're seeing here, I just thought that this was a really, really, really interesting chart. So whenever we talk about our chronic absenteeism, we have a conversation where we say, who's fixing it? Who's got good ideas? Where is this process working that it's not working here? What you're looking at here is all the 26 schools in our CESA, and this is their rates of chronic absenteeism. And I am sorry if I'm belaboring this, but I just want to make sure we're really clear. Chronic absenteeism means you were gone from school for any reason more than 10% of the time instruction was offered. So they could all be excused absences. It doesn't matter. You were gone from school. The state would consider you chronically absent. If there were 100 days of school and you missed 11, you're chronically absent by the state's definition. Habitual truancy is you have missed all or part of 5 school days that are unexcused. So the state allows for 10 excused days during the course of a year. Some families burn those up in November, September, some families burn those up, and then by December, if they don't bring in a doctor's note, it is unexcused. So truancy is unexcused absences only. So what you're looking at is the rates of chronic absenteeism in our CESA region, and I can't read from the side, so I'm sorry. But I want to point out to you, this is us right here, Black River Falls. If they are in green, that means their chronic absenteeism rates are moving in the right direction. And if they are in red, their chronic absenteeism is stagnant or moving in the wrong direction. So, Black River Falls is right here. You can see that our rate of chronic absenteeism, it's always another year delayed because they need all the audited attendance from the year. We are 25.6, 26.4, and 27.1 in 24-25. Ask any one of our buildings how many additional initiatives they started to address chronic absenteeism during the 24-25 school year, and our numbers still went the wrong direction. Conversely, look at some of these other school districts that are in the green, specifically who's moving. We looked at Sparta, which already is much lower, 10, 10, 11.6. Then you look at someone like Holman, whose rates are 2.7, 3.4. That is a dramatic difference. So what we did is we looked at the districts that are improving, and I looked at what counties those were in, and I called schools in those counties and said, how do your counties handle truancy? What do you have in place that is working for you guys, that you're moving in the right direction? Because we are not seeming to get any leverage. And you're not going to be surprised, we are the only ones that do it the way that we are currently doing it, and it's not our choice. It is the system that we have been given. We have this chart for the entire state, not just for our CESA. So we looked at districts who had significant improvement, and we've also reached out to those counties. Many, many, many years ago, like 500 years ago, when I did my practicum as a principal, the principals had a truancy citation booklet that when a student was truant, I got to write out a truancy citation for that student because they were truant. That meant that they had a date in court. There was a date every month where all the people that got a truancy ticket during that month had to come in front of the judge. I got to talk about, here's what the school has tried, here's their current attendance report. The family got to say, but this, and this happened, and the judge made a ruling. That has not been the case in Jackson County for a really long time. For sure, for the 13 years that I've been in this role, the Jackson County model is that when our principals file truancy on a student, it goes in as a referral to DHHS, and the family gets assigned a social worker. The social worker then tries to engage with the family, and they start from square one, which we have already done. Why aren't you coming to school? Are there barriers that are keeping you from coming to school? Are there things we could do to encourage you to come to school? Is there a couple classes that are your favorite that we could do more of so that you come to school? Like all of those things. Are there stressors during your day that we could be helpful with? All those things that we do before we file truancy, the social worker then starts and does that exact same process. Meanwhile, more and more and more time is passing, and the student still isn't attending. Sometimes the social worker, most recently, each of our buildings meets with the county once a month to update on all their attendances. attendance cases. And when our principals and admin are documenting and reaching out and doing everything they can to get that family to come, and then we go to that meeting and the social worker says, we've dismissed them, mom said that they fixed it. But we weren't at the table, and so they didn't look at any data that says they really haven't fixed it, but the case has been dismissed. So then if our principals want to bring it back, they have to go through the entire process of filing truancy all over again from square one. Meanwhile, we filed in November, and it's now March, and it's been dismissed. By the time that process gets going again, it's July, and you're not truant in July because come August, the beginning of the school year, you get 5 days, you get to start all over with a clean slate of days. I can't even tell you how frustrating it is, how slow it moves in our community. When I've spoken to the judges about truancy, they have said that our community has too high of a poverty rate to just hand out fines for citations for truancy. I hear that, and through all of our conversations, there are lots of other possibilities. We've learned other districts, or other counties, they will do things like they would pull a student's hunting license, they would pull a student's driver's license, they can pull the work permit. You can do a lot of things besides just giving out a fine that are all lawful in truancy regulation. What I am advocating for, and just today I met at the Sheriff's Department with the superintendent from Alma Center and Melrose Mindoro. We are the 3 school districts in Jackson County, so we all have a very vested interest in Jackson County procedures. There's a tiny sliver of Blair Taylor School District in Jackson County, but the bulk of their district is in another county, and they choose to take all their truancy to the other county because they've got a more firm system. But what they do is when the student is truant, they write out, the school resource officer writes out that truancy ticket, and they set a goal. They say, this is your warning. You have 30 days to fix your attendance. If in those 30 days you fix your attendance, the ticket is never issued. If you do not fix your attendance, then we're issuing you the ticket. I think it's like $256. It's not even about the money. It's about some kind of hammer that would happen after we file truancy.
That's what they do.
Trempealeau and Monroe County. So the other part of this, in Monroe County, they can give a municipal, that's called a municipal citation. They can do that 2 different times, and if the student still doesn't fix it, then it becomes involved with the legal system. And the Monroe County courthouse has 1 day per month that 2 hours of that morning are set aside for all truancy cases. All school districts in Monroe County that have kids that they've filed truancy on, and all families from all those school districts who have received a truancy citation during that month all come in the same day. The judge might stand up with Alex and his family for 5 minutes. The judge would say, what's your current attendance report? The school would be there with a report. Here it is. Here's the things since the last time we met. Here's what we said we were going to do. Here's what the attendance is. You get to talk to the judge. The judge says, I fine you, or I pull your work permit, or whatever it is. And it takes 2 hours, 1 day a month, and all the truancy in the county is addressed on an every 30-day basis. We just simply have nothing near that. It goes to DHHS, and it dies there, and we are not ever getting that chance to go to court with all the factual information. So today we met to talk about our school resource officer contract, and I got up on my soapbox and said, we are dying with truancy. And so if you look at our neighbors, Melrose Mindoro and Alma Center, they are the ones in our district. They are frustrated with attendance, and look at how good theirs is compared to ours. Again, this is chronic absenteeism, not truancy, so not exactly the same measure, but they are also frustrated. So their 2 superintendents decided they would like to join in this plight. We are meeting with the assistant district attorney on May 8th to see what she's willing to prosecute, what she's not willing to prosecute. The Sheriff's Department was incredibly, incredibly helpful today. They are the ones that helped us with the simple truancy ticket that comes with defiance or disrespect in school, that a simple truancy citation can be written. They believe that they could relook at that ordinance, and they think that we could get to a point where our school resource officer could write the truancy citations. We just need to know if the court system is going to back that up or not. So I feel like we've made some really big strides in the last month and a half, and that last piece is with the judges. And so I wanted you to know, because not everyone is really happy about asking for change. I will tell you that DHHS in the past, they have wanted all truancy to go through them, as the superintendent in the county seat, state statute says I must call a truancy meeting for the county once every 5 years. This is that year, and so I'm responsible for putting together a truancy plan. My other 2 times that I've done this, DHHS has said, we want every referral. We want everyone to come through the social worker. When they came to my office like 3 weeks ago, they finally agreed we don't have the bandwidth to treat every one of these. I said, and not all truancy needs a social worker. Some of them just need a hammer. Those that need a social worker, fantastic. That can be a pathway for them. But if we treat everybody like they need a social worker, the system gets bogged down and we're not moving anywhere. So my next step is the assistant district attorney and then the judges. And so if any of our board members are interested in helping with advocacy there, I would welcome some other voices at the table because when you look at this attendance rate, remember on that state report card, we are losing whole points on our state report card score because of chronic absenteeism. And when some of the other county agencies have said to me, we know it's so bad and we're just at a loss to fix it. And then I say, and we get a public report card. Your agency does not get a public scorecard. I need some help because this can't be just a school district problem. This has to become our whole system working together. We had our business partnership luncheon last week and all of the business partnerships in town, I shared with them the chronic absenteeism and how exorbitantly out of whack ours is compared to the rest of the state and our region. And they just said, we see that. We see that in the employees that we're hiring. I said, of course you do. Of course you do. And they agreed that it can't be just a school district problem. It has to be everybody working together. So I feel like I am ruffling a lot of feathers, but for a very, very, very good cause. And today the 2 neighboring superintendents both said that they would like to join in on that advocacy. So I wanted to give you that update. I'm really hopeful that we're going to see some impactful change. If we could streamline the process, families would have a much more immediate consequence. So when Christina tells a family in December, I'm going to have to file truancy, you haven't fixed, blah, 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 and that family hears nothing till March, that's really not a very immediate consequence. So, questions, comments, thoughts on all of that?
Question. We just heard about the Monroe County system, but Tomah is conspicuously falling off the map. In the past 3 years, despite how bad our numbers are, they've moved by about 1.5%. Tomah has gone from 8 to 22. Do we have any information on what happened there?
So, I have been focusing on county systems, not individual schools. And so I reached out to Sparta. I know they're part of Monroe County, but there's a lot of other factors, the staffing in the school, so I have not reached out to them specifically. I am more interested in what the county system is doing right now.
I know that might not be politically friendly to be like, hey, what did you guys screw up? But
I wouldn't lead with that, thank you.
Yeah, but the real issue is more, you're starting to look more like us. Is there something that you have changed that now resembles the way we do things that wasn't the case before? In other words, that swing is so huge that it's another source of potential information. Not just how are people making it better, but what has caused a school district to increase the rates so heavily. I would be very curious if we had did they change a policy? Did something happen?
Sometimes people change their settings in Skyward about how attendance is taken, and it dramatically changes their output. So
you do that?
Not in that direction.
But in the other direction,
we also need to be truthful.
Just a curiosity question, what do you think her rate was 10 years ago?
So we can look that up. I will tell you that our attendance rate has always been low. I could pull up the 13-14 state report card and I could tell you. But then they measured average daily attendance. They didn't measure chronic absenteeism. So the chronic absenteeism I think started getting measured shortly before 2020. Our attendance was never good. It has been worse since 2020, and it just has never bounced back after everybody went virtual. I think I've shared this before, the year after, so 2021 school year, when we allowed people to go virtual, as did all schools in the state of Wisconsin, most schools had about 10% of their student population choose to stay home and go virtual. We had 35% of our population, and we've just never brought that back up. We've never closed that gap again. So.
Well, I think this is probably one of the most important things you need to fix in this district, because I mean, like, trying to raise, turn out kids that will be productive members of the community, and like one of those things is probably having a job. And if you don't show up to a job, you get fired, and you don't have a job. So it's kind of important. And also, like, the judge making an excuse saying that they don't have money to pay a fine. Well, maybe they should just go to school and they won't have a fine, you know? So excuses are, that's the problem, excuses.
Not to mention, if you're not there, it's really tough for our interventions to work. If you're not there even hearing instruction, it's really tough to stay on top of the instruction.
Yeah. You done?
It's all you.
Thanks. We already have a policy regarding truancy or absenteeism. Policy number 5200. It clearly says that administrator shall designate administrator in each school of attendance officer. That officer will abide by the state laws, and it in very nicely detail is written. So if we follow this policy and have high school, middle school, elementary, and Forest Street, we designate one officer for attendance officer who can connect with a student, teacher, and a faculty teacher. Every faculty has a one head teacher. These three people and the principal and vice principal and advisor connect with all of them, and then also connect with social services before filing a truancy ticket or citation. And then Ho Chunk Nation, they have a total different culture, but they totally abide by the Ho Chunk rule of law. Then they have their own legislatures. They make laws and they abide by the previous laws and current laws. And then they have a social services. They have around 30 some department fully functioning and working. And that this designated administrator will connect with the Ho Chunk Nation as well. So this is a lot of work just to help one student. In order to do that, we need, in my opinion, according to this policy, that administrator you will assign a school attendance officer. If that school officer is going to connect with all these people, that why he or she was absent. This is my opinion, and maybe the new board will work on this policy.
So there is an attendance officer appointed at each school. For example, at the high school, it's Mr. Erickson. At Forest Street, it's Mrs. Kirshner. So there is somebody identified in each of the schools to serve as the attendance officer. And we do meet with DHHS on a monthly basis to talk about that list of attendance kids. Last year, the board added the student success coordinator position. She's been doing a lot of research about how one individual is simply not enough to be able to have the conversations with all families. And so we're actually in the process, she's done a lot of new learning this year and has brought back kind of the best of some of the ideas for the school side. So what I was talking about in the county agencies, that's kind of the external points to address that are kind of my next steps. And then each of the schools are also working on putting together attendance teams. As part of the school improvement plans the last couple of years, many grade levels have set goals around improving student attendance. And so the grade level team will look at how many kids are absent, and they keep track of their outreach to families and students. And I feel like we spend a lot of time and effort trying to address the truancy and attendance issues, why people don't come, and how we could help that out. So we've not arrived at the magic wand yet when it comes to this.
Yeah. So as far as Erickson, vice principal, he is extremely busy.
For sure. So if there was a one person whose full-time job it was, you're absolutely right. That would be very different from the sharing of responsibility.
I have noticed his work in the school. Oh my goodness. He is all over in the school, diffusing this situation, running towards the restroom for any call. He's all over in the school. I don't think so he can invest quality time for truancy. So therefore we may follow our own policy, which based on the state laws, to designate full-time for attendance officer. Look at their name, officer. Oh, are you a police officer? It's kind of scary on the first place, officer. Erickson is not officer. He's just the vice principal doing 10,001 thing. So this is my opinion, I would say.
I add to your opinion a little bit, bud. If you have somebody working on it full time, but you don't have any consequences, it's not going to do any good.
Yeah.
So you need consequences to go full circle. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yes.
From a lot of fronts.
Full-time officer will definitely enforce the consequences, which it is explained here. It's a very big policy. In nutshell, they have written a lot.
Any other thoughts or comments about
When
the work?
are you anticipating engaging with
Judges?
Yeah.
So the Sheriff's Department was very helpful today. I had, I'm not gonna remember, it was Nick Gray and Kyle Nosfish and Sheriff Aldera, and I can't remember the Sergeant Johnson. They all suggested that while I'm waiting for the Assistant District Attorney, I should also start working with the judges. They also had a great idea that perhaps if our district attorney is not interested in prosecuting, I should go through Corporation Counsel, who's an individual that's got a lot of ties here in Black River Falls that works for Weld Riley. So that is my next call tomorrow. So all of it kind of moving at the same time.
I just want to say that I really appreciate you getting out there and dealing with these agencies. I've been hearing a lot about this problem, and hearing that it's a problem is very different from hearing that you're out there meeting with these individuals working on fixing it. And I do appreciate that. And the fact that you have the other superintendents on board is important and meaningful. And if you get anything moving on this, I know that I'm probably willing to support it.
Okay, great.
And I think a lot of the rest of the board might be as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I guess just let us know when you have a date that you might need us for
Perfect.
support.
Will do. Will do.
Okay. Moving on then to 8.6.
Related.
It's a related.
Different, but related. So every board election, the collective personality of the board shifts a little bit. So this comment is going to come from the previous personality, and we can always revisit this. I have heard comments about wanting to increase parent accountability when it comes to their investing in their child's success at school, that parents should have some share in the responsibility for their child's success. And so when we look at our chronic absenteeism rate, the highest rate is kindergarten, and then it gets better, and then it grows again by junior and senior in high school. At the kindergarten level, it is 100% trying to change family behavior, trying to get those parents to understand you can't take a 4-day weekend every weekend. You have to be here on time. You have to do, all of those things. And then by the time it's high school, that's an entirely different problem. That is kids, and we certainly, I don't say, oh, that's kids, let it go. I mean, that's a different solution. When you look at how much academic intervention we do with kids in first grade, second grade to try to get them to that target of reading on grade level by third grade, which is one of the greatest indicators of academic success long-term in school, is on grade level by third grade. And you add up the number of absences of some of our kids, particularly at those foundational skills, younger levels, they've missed so much school that they could be a full year behind by third grade. The research around retention in schools is not positive. I would never support a rule that reached beyond kindergarten for automatic retention, but I'm interested in having a conversation. Could we make a policy that said kindergarten students, because statute says kindergarten is not required, but first grade, you have to have successfully completed a program in kindergarten studies. Well, what percentage attendance is successfully completing a program of kindergarten studies? I talked to Mrs. Kirshner about it, and she had some conversation with the kindergarten teachers, and I just want to give you a little bit of data about this. So for last school year, there was one student that attended less than 50% of the year. So every other day, that student had some medical issues, and I do think our policy needs to address that. If there's a student that's hospitalized, if there's extenuating circumstances, our policy has to provide for that opportunity. There were 2 students that attended under 70%, so they missed 30% of the instruction. So at 176 days of school, they missed 30% of that. And we had 3 students under 80%, just for a frame of reference. This school year, we right now have 6 students under 80%, 2 under 70%, and 1 under 60%. So what we are interested in just having a conversation about is, what if we had a policy that said kindergarten students who miss more than X percentage of the school year are recommended for retention. Other things that would be taken into account would be their academic performance as well as their social emotional adjustment. So if they are well above grade level in math and ELA, we assess plenty that we know what they're capable of doing, and they are socially, emotionally adjusted to kindergarten, we can have that conversation and potentially move that student forward, because we don't want to do long-term damage, of course not. But if they miss more than whatever percentage we agree on, they're significantly behind in math and ELA, to move them forward is destining them for years of intervention because they simply haven't been exposed to the curriculum. I'm curious if the board has an interest in exploring this idea.
So why stop at kindergarten? Why not the entire forestry grade levels?
Yeah.
That's what I have a hard time with too, is like, kindergarten you can't miss school, now you're in first grade, you can.
So first of all, getting them that first year, you're really addressing the change in your parents' behavior. So if the parent changes their behavior that first year, hopefully that new behavior sticks as opposed to defaulting back. The research on retention is not great the older a child gets. It leads to the dropout rate increases monumentally, the school to prison pipeline, all those things. First grade, we could have a conversation about. I didn't ask you to talk to your teachers about that, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have thoughts about first grade, or?
I can share just a little information from this school year.
Sure.
Currently, we have 32% of our kindergartners who are below 89% of attendance, and our first graders are 23%. So I feel like that's a pretty significant difference. If we look at our current 4K students who will be coming into kindergarten next year, we have 27, 28, we have 30 students who are already 89% or less attendance this year. So
And
I
so
really
remember-
feel like at
4K
first
is
grade,
optional,
things pick up.
So they,
Their attendance rates drop and things pick up.
Yeah.
It's at that kindergarten level where we really have to hold parents accountable.
And so, yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
And so we were thinking that if we made a change at the kindergarten level, at the same time, we change procedures in the county so that there are external factors also encouraging them. I feel like that's kind of a two prongs moving at the same time.
I have one critical question, which is what happens the second year?
Yeah, right. That's
What
the idea with
happens the
retention, right?
third year?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
do we end up with like a 10-year-old kindergartner, like in a hypothetical situation? Do they just not keep showing up forever?
I feel like you have to look at the developmental appropriateness, right? There is zero support for a double retention of a student, right? I think that in whatever policy and language we draft, we would have to take special education into account. We would have to talk about medical needs. We would have to talk about just extenuating circumstances. I feel like we've got some nice behavioral rubrics that we would be able to say the student is at or above grade level for their social emotional adjustment, like they can play school well, but students who are only attending, 60% of the days, their academics are lower. The more the academics become challenging, the more behavioral outbursts you see, so they really do move hand in hand often.
So in theory, if you get half a year of kindergarten and then you redo it and get another half a year of kindergarten, you might have absorbed a year of kindergarten and be ready to move on.
I just don't think that I could, me personally, you are the board and you will make policy, I would never recommend that we would retain a student twice. And so if a family wants to call our bluff for a year, I guess that would happen, and then we wouldn't make that recommendation the second time.
Okay.
I mean, I have interest to continue discussion on it.
Okay, so you would like to see some drafted language?
I think yes,
Okay.
yeah. I think it's an interesting idea. We've talked about that idea of accountability to parents a lot. It is, the idea that is there any benefit to doing it in other grades? But I think the idea of retention, especially at the earlier age, the better, like, we know that the faster we intervene on literally anything, the better outcomes we have. It makes sense to do it in kindergarten.
And I will do more reading on first grade, retention. I just haven't, because I wasn't in that mindset, but I will.
And then the only thing I would say is if we do this, and I'm not saying I'm not supportive of it, but what I would say is I would want there to be some major alarm bells by the time you got to like halfway towards hitting that.
For
So
sure.
I remember when my first child started in the system, I didn't realize that, like, because this was still pretty soon after COVID, a kid would have a cough and I'd be like, they're home! Like, and then I hit like 6 days and started to hear things. I was like, what? What's going on? I had no idea about the policy.
Yeah.
It was all completely new to me.
Yep.
So I would just say that there has to be like
For sure.
heavy foreshadowing.
We've talked about our report cards also having their attendance rate included right on the report card, so that there's, it's crystal clear. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm hearing support for drafting some language and bringing it back to you for consideration.
Do you want support of the policy committee with that drafting, or do you feel it's?
I'm worried about timeline, because if we are going to implement next year, I think we'd want to launch it with families the end of this year. So I will draft it, and we'll probably lean on the committee as a whole of the board, if that's agreeable.
Sure.
Okay.
So it's probably be on the next month.
Yep.
Meeting minutes.
Can we all agree if this gets sent out, we'll read it well ahead of time ourselves, so we just come to the meeting and write at it?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good.
Alright,
Thank you for that discussion.
moving on to 9.1, monthly expenditures. Brandon, it's your time to shine.
Alright, we do have a 9.0, I don't know if you wanted to touch on it.
Yeah, that was just for your information. I was gonna just briefly highlight, there's a report that comes out off the April referenda that were all out. And so it was a 61% passage rate throughout the state, which is up from April of 2025. So just thought that was interesting for you to see. 61.3, 46 of the 75 questions passed, so. Just want to share.
I brought something with Shelley. I'm just going to give it to you to see it, but it's what some other districts put in their local papers prior to the referendum.
Good.
That's it, just so you have it.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
All right, so expenditures, I wrote a memo to the board, hopefully you had a chance to see it in the board packet that kind of explains a little bit about what this looks like. So although it is April 20th, this is a report up through March, and so you'd think that's the end of the quarter in the private business world. So that's what it is here too, it's the end of the third quarter for us since we're on a fiscal year instead of a calendar year. The snapshot just kind of describes a little bit. I went through all of these different object numbers, and then on the memo to the board, I listed it on the back, and I'll continue to do that board memo each month, and then those objects will stay listed on the back for your reference. And then just some more detail about our operating budget for the year. Things that continue to be concerning are some of those fixed costs. Electric this year is just kicking our butts, and so that's a big reason for why we're trending so high right now. But that's not the only one. Just if you think about, you've met Kent and he's been here before, just the things that he has to pay for out of his budget, those are the things that are really, really ran up over the course of the last few years.
So I'll make a motion to approve the monthly expenditures.
And I have a question. Could I?
I don't know, I'm not the president.
I'll allow it.
Okay. Could you please go down? This is the budget, right? $24,575,959, right?
69.
Yeah, 69. So I was talking to you earlier too. I was wondering that the packet we got from Landa Center, it says that we have $109 million and $366,000, in which we have a salaries of teachers $65 million, and then benefit $22 million, purchase. There are so many of these things add up to $109 million, $366,000. I was wondering, maybe in the future, next meeting, you could talk about it so I can hear it on the whole, if I don't make it here and listen to that point. It could be mistake or it could be error.
Yeah, we talked about this beforehand. I would be happy to get back to you on it. It wasn't on the agenda, so I didn't have time to prepare an answer for you.
No, I received this on my packet.
Yes, this is.
Yeah, so I compare this guy with this paper. It was totally opposite. Thanks.
So there's a motion for a second on the table.
Yes. Right, so all in favor of approving the budget recommendations?
No, monthly expenditures,
Monthly
sorry.
expenditures.
Yep. Unless you want to do the other one with no conversation.
Yeah, all in favor of the monthly expenditures, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Alright, now we will move on to 9.2, the 2026-2027 budget recommendations.
All right, so our budget recommendations are listed here, and so some of them have already been approved by the board. And in the memo that I wrote, it talked a little bit about each of these. We have some balancing to do, which includes more reduction than adding. And so you can see the things that we have added here get us down to about balanced within $24. Keep in mind, this is a budget and it's estimations. We don't know anything for a long time, and we never really know everything. It's just our best guess at the current time. One thing I want to add, 1B, we had this one listed at 8.5% or 8%, and it came back officially at a 6.9%. So while that saved us $25,000, we're also paying $151,000 extra
for the same coverage, not that we're salty about it.
So that one is ready for your approval this month, in addition to numbers 13 through 19. One other thing I just wanted to add on here, kind of goes along with number 18, and again mentioned in that memo, but our Title I allocation, which is federal funding, came back. I was estimating a smaller amount than we got the previous year, but I estimated about $35,000 less than we got this year. And they came back at $70,000 less than we got this year. So that kind of factored into some of the decisions that we made.
And so I'd like to talk through each one of the recommendations. Number 12, the reduce the high school science teacher. We are not going to reduce course offerings for any of our students in the high school. This is really a function of enrollment. The graduating classes are larger than the incoming classes at the high school. In our science department, they have we have 4 teachers in that department, and they've offered a lot of electives in addition to the required science classes. All of those things will still be available. We have more science staff than we can fill students in full-time classes. So they are doing some of our duties throughout the building. One is teaching in another department because he's dual certified. But Mr. Erickson and Mrs. Penza are very confident that we can offer all of the same science courses that we are currently offering with one less science teacher in the building.
You gonna absorb that head count, or is that gonna be cut?
It would be a reduction. Number 13 and 14 and 15, I'm going to lump those together for now. Over the last many years, we have continued to add special education aides. When a student moves in or is identified as a student with a disability, there's an awful lot of advocacy from that IEP team that student has another aide, another body, a person who helps them navigate throughout the school day. We find ourselves having dramatically increased that over years, and we just keep adding, never stepping back when kids move out, because let's be honest, when you're in a school, if one child leaves, there are definitely more kids that could use help, right? There is always somebody that adult could engage with, even if it's not the student that they were originally brought on board to help. Because of our budget challenges, we've also looked at all of our staffing comparables. We have more support staff per student than anybody else in our region. We know that our rate of special education students is also higher than the average, and so we take that into account that we likely would have more special education aides because we have a higher rate of special education students. But even with that, we feel confident that we could make some reductions. There is a shared responsibility between the general education teacher and the special education teacher to provide those accommodations while the student is in the classroom. And so each of the principals at Red Creek Middle School and the high school believe that they could do with one less aide next year. We are very confident all of those positions would be absorbed through attrition, that we have some aide openings already in the district. Some of them starting probably March. If we have an aide that leaves us, we hire a long-term sub to get through the rest of that school year, as opposed to hiring a full-time person on board that expects employment next year. Some of those long-term subs often end up in full-time positions, but there would not need to be a layoff for that to happen. The high school one is a little bit different. I've talked to you a little bit about Mr. Peter Riley, who is facilitating our Phoenix program, the alt-ed program for our high school students. He is transformational in that role. I bet the last couple of years there's maybe been one, maybe two parents who have attended parent-teacher conferences of Phoenix kids, and he had families in there all night because he made food for them, and it was just the expectation that all parents would come and visit. He's just doing really, really, really great work, and the kids there are engaging far more than they used to be, and that means that we need more help for him. He can't be over there by himself trying to manage all of those students at one time, and so the high school would actually like to transfer their aide from in the high school building over to that Phoenix. If you recall, they are in, it's now called the Tiger Resource Center, but it's the old transportation office over by the maintenance shed. our Title VI, which is funding that we receive from the federal government based on the number of Native American students that we serve. That Title VI funding has a parent advisory committee that directs where that money goes and how it is spent. Dr. Sullivan facilitates those conversations. That parent advisory committee would like to use a portion of those funds to pay a half of that aid in the Phoenix program, because I'll be honest, the Ho-Chunk Education Department has been really disappointed in the Phoenix program for many years, and they are really excited to see the rigor increase in that program and see the kids engaging and working towards graduation. So that is why that number is different than the aid reductions from Red Creek and the middle school, because we would only we're going to not eliminate that position. We're transferring it over to the Phoenix program, and it's $15,000 because part of that cost would come from the Title VI funds. The next one is an ad. We have watched our math data for many years, and we have not seen consistent growth at the secondary level for far too long. And so we are interested in employing our own math instructional coach. That goes back to the CISA conversation. There's a lady, I'm sorry, I don't even know her real last name. Everyone in the district calls her Math Chelsea. Her name is Chelsea, what's her last name? Adams, or Math Chelsea. Everybody knows her as Math Chelsea. We've been purchasing days from Math Chelsea for years. She does not work full-time. She does not want to work full-time, but we want more of the work that she's doing. And so we would like to hire our own full-time math instructional coach. And I would like to, the administrative team is recommending that instructional coach starts with 5th grade teachers and does nothing but math instructional coaching from 5th through senior in high school, because we often see growth in the earlier levels of elementary, and then that transition from elementary to middle is often where we see a dip. And so we would like the 5th grade teachers to be receiving the same professional development as the middle school and then transition into the high school. So that is our recommendation, and it comes at a cost of some other positions. But we all are tired of looking at that state report card and feeling the same feels that we do all the time. So that is one of our more significant ads for this school year. The bus, you have heard us lament about a bus forever and ever, amen. We do not feel that we can ignore that for another year. And I have a hard time sacrificing instructional support in terms of a math instructional coach for a bus right now, and so the $45,000 is for a 3-year financing of a bus that we would be able to sell off, one of the oldest in our fleet, and we would begin financing it. Is it a 3-year payoff?
It's a 3-year, yep.
Yeah, a 3-year payoff that we would begin financing. If the district decides to move forward with a referendum, we know that bus replacement is getting us back on schedule is definitely a part of that. Brandon, first year going through the budget, we filled some of those holes that we perennial fall into. I'm still hopeful that there might be end of year money, but then you look at Ken's electricity budget and you think, no, there's not. But we are not giving up the cause of adding another bus yet. If that opportunity arises, we do have one new bus in the budget for next year, and we're suggesting that we would replace 2 of them, and one of them would be on a 3-year finance. So that's the $45,000 right there. Combine the district reading specialist. So this is really the Title I conversation. Again, this is possible through attrition. We have a full-time interventionist at Forest Street that does reading interventions. And then we have Vicki Kramer, who's our district reading specialist. Both of them are highly skilled individuals that do fantastic work. Vicki does a lot of coordination elementary-wide, particularly with the Act 20, the reading legislation that prompted the personalized reading plans and parent communication and the assessments that go along with that. It's no longer our first year doing that. Our teachers are now in the groove a little bit because it's not brand new to them. And we are suggesting that we transition Vicki into part-time reading specialist at Forest Street, doing instructional coaching with those teachers in the literacy realm, and she would also have some intervention. So she would work directly with students for a portion of her day, and she would maintain the reading coordination for the other portion of her day. Title I funds can also be used for math, and so when we look at that reduction of Title I funds, but we do also have the add of the math instructional coach, which could also be Title I if we weren't having that. If the federal government wouldn't have reduced our Title I allocation, it wouldn't have to be instead of, it would be in addition to. But because of that loss of revenue, that's the boat that we find ourselves in. Vicki is aware of that and is comfortable with that. At the Forest Street level, many of those foundational skills, it is repetition and practice, and so the Title VI group is also in support of hiring another part-time aide to do some of that repetition and practice with kids, and so that would be part of her reading specialist, would be generating the most appropriate and intentional activities for the aides to be doing when they're with the kids. So it will be a loss of direct intervention with students, but it won't be an elimination of that. And then finally, the Student Success Coordinator. I understand 100% how ridiculous this sounds after all of the conversation that we've had about truancy. This was the person that we added last year to really dig in deeper with students and families regarding attendance at the secondary level. So she works at the middle school and high school, and every one of the administrators that engages with her in the work she does say that she was definitely the right person to hire for the job. She's created some great systems, and she's an asset to the district. We believe that some of the other openings that are going to be available in the district, she would also be interested in. So it would be a reduction of this role, but we believe that she would continue to serve our community and our families in another role. She also has done, as I mentioned before, some new learning, and she's kind of excited about helping some of those building attendance teams get off the ground. And so I understand that we spent a lot of time talking about attendance, and now I'm suggesting that the admin team is recommending that we reduce that student success coordinator. This is a purely financial decision. If we didn't find ourselves in the boat that we were in, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Do you have any questions about any of those items on the bottom?
So number 16, math instructional coach, $85,000. So that individual will teach the mathematics teacher how to teach math?
Mm-hmm. Not just one, but all of them. During the ESSER funded years, we put somebody in that role, and we have gone back and looked at our state report cards during the years that we had a math interventionist and instructional coach at the middle school. Our value added scores were significantly higher, and then when our ESSER funding went away, we eliminated that position because that was some of our extra money, and we've seen that shift in those value added scores. So I feel like we have data that tells us this is an impactful strategy to use.
So mathematics teacher, when we hire, they already have qualifications.
Correct.
They have a degree, they have a training, they have all 9 yards with him or her to teach math. So we are hiring another math teacher to teach a qualified person how to teach math.
So at the middle school, our teachers do not have to be licensed in the content area that they are teaching. Some of our middle school teachers are 1 through 9 grade level certified, so they basically carry the same certification as like a 4th grade teacher. And so they may or may not have specialized in math, but they get hired to teach math. And so they're certainly capable individuals, don't get me wrong, but teaching math is difficult when you're teaching math to kids who don't necessarily want to learn math, right? And so there are definitely strategies that are more impactful than other strategies. And so I understand what you're saying, and I think that there are some teachers who don't appreciate having a coach help them with their instructional practice. And I would tell you that there are many teachers who do really appreciate somebody to help plan with them, somebody who can go classroom to classroom and say, oh, I see what you were trying to do there. I wonder what would happen if we would have done this, or I saw this happen in this classroom that it really did work. So it's kind of like a chair of the math department for those grade levels to make sure they are interconnected in the work, and that kids are getting consistent instruction, vocabulary, all those things all the way through.
Yeah. So it makes sense now. So we are aiding one person or maybe two for math instructional coach for $85,000 total investment per year. And the point 18 combined district reading specialist intervention role of accommodating Title I reduction. That individual is very important. It's $100,000. Why you do not want that person?
So there are two people right now. There's a full-time interventionist and there's a district reading specialist. The interventionist is retiring this year, and we are suggesting that we are going to combine those two roles. So the one person, the district reading specialist, will serve parts of both of those roles. And I just want to be clear that those dollar amounts are estimates, and it includes salary, benefit, WRS, Social Security. It includes everything. I don't want you to see that and say that individual makes that much money.
No.
There's a lot more to the formula.
Yeah, the two
Yep.
people, so it may be $50,000.
I'm not gonna
So
comment on
I don't know approximately. So one individual is retiring.
Correct.
So would you like to replace that individual with some other teacher?
We are suggesting that we don't have the funding to be able to do that.
Oh, okay.
But if you would like to help us advocate for a referendum to help get the funds.
Yeah, I received the survey and I'm working on it. Did you receive it?
So Shelley, the instructional coach piece for math, I'm hearing admin is backing this as more of an importance to have or to make a step at the middle school level, correct?
And high school.
And high school. Okay, so you're going to teach across both.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the middle school has had some very strong growth in math, and then there, Mr. Berger mentioned the youth involved in the teachers that were here. When we had that bubble class going through and had ESSER funds, we increased each of the teams at the middle school to 6 teachers, so they each only had to teach one content area, so they could really dive in and become experts at math or whatever their content was. Enrollment has gone down, the bubble class has gone through, and we no longer have ESSER funds, so now there's 5 teachers, which means they are teaching more than one content area at the middle school. And so there's not somebody just specializing in math, they're doing some social studies and math, or some science and some math. And so when it's the only subject you teach is a different approach than when you have to teach multiple things. And so we are saying that math is important enough that we need to make sure there is somebody who has the flexibility of schedule to be in those classrooms, to be sitting next to them when they're doing their planning and all of those pieces.
2 other questions now
Yep.
related to that. The bus addition, right? So it's about 1/3 of the finance of a bus. If this is this year's budget and you carry it into next year, I mean, would you then have 2 buses that you're paying a lease on, and then by the 3rd year it's 3 buses, so you might as well just bought a bus. So that's, I guess I'm just wondering like where we're going with this if we get into this whole lease idea. And I get that you're gonna build it back into financing, sorry, not a lease, but
I would love to not finance it.
no, I get it, but
so how
and
it
then
would
you
work?
just kind of build it into the referendum with hopes that the referendum passes, and then the second bus is just there, not having to be financed.
We wouldn't keep leasing.
We wouldn't
Yeah,
keep
or
leasing.
financing.
Correct.
We would be tied into it for 3 years, and yes, that $45,000 listed there is now in the budget. So for the next 3 years, we would pay for that bus in 3 years.
Right.
On the 4th year, that $45,000 is now available to, if we need to, do it again, or if we don't, add it to whatever extra budgeting we
It
can
becomes a reduction.
Now, just
So every 3rd year it would let you get 1 additional bus and still be 2 behind within a 3-year cycle, 6, right? So
In this particular bus, our special education fleet is really, really old, and so this would purchase a lift bus.
yeah, I see that piece. So, all right. So last question. We talk a lot about special education, and we've talked about truancy and attendance and that type of thing. Do we ever ran numbers on our special ed kids and like what their attendance rates actually are? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Like, do we
that
run
is
those
not
out?
our greatest gap. Our greatest gap is between our native and non-native students by far. Our Native American chronic absenteeism is closer to 50% of the students. Our special education is not a significant gap. I will look it up and share it with you guys,
Yeah,
but
I'm
it's
just-
not.
I'm just curious more
It's
than
not a
anything,
significant gap.
'cause
So like right now we have like the loans probably for like the Red Creek.
Yep.
When do those get fulfilled?
I think 2042, they're 20-year loans. So the first one started in 2014, a 20-year loan, 2034. The first one would fall off. And then 2020 was the second one, and so 2040, that one would, although I'm sorry, the Red Creek one, we paid off the interest earlier, so I think we chopped off maybe a year. I'm not 100% sure, but they are 20-year loans.
And we've shared with you that we plan on paying some off early this year for next year, so that would take some off too.
Yeah.
So that could get fulfilled like in 6-7 years maybe, the
Maybe.
first one.
Mm-hmm. And then that will definitely impact the mill rate, if that's where you're headed, right? Once that debt falls off, that definitely impacts our mill rate.
And so keep in mind, those are like 1% interest rates, which is really, really good. And so if we have the choice between something else and continuing a 1% interest rate, it's hard to say no to that.
Especially when you're financing a bus.
Yeah. Right.
And I just want to remind everyone, even if we could,
Yes.
we can't use that money for anything other than debt payment.
Right.
It cannot be borrowed, moved around, there is zero shell game. The money we borrowed must be used for debt payment. Yep.
Building or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really struggle with this is like you have money in your left pocket and your right pocket, but you can't, you gotta use, you know.
Welcome to school funding.
You know, it's like.
I'm gonna say governmental accounting.
Governmental
right?
You know, because you could get extra to pay off on the building, you could use that for a bus. You know.
And so I'm just gonna walk through this. So each year the school board has chosen to use a defeasance strategy. So what that boils down to is the board has said we are going to tax our community higher than the bare minimum we need to pay our debt. You've agreed to that every year. You've given us the authority to tax higher than the bare minimum to make our debt payment. What an operational referendum is the same thing. You are asking our community to allow you to tax higher to be able to pay for all of those other things as opposed to just the debt. So as we move forward, if we move forward with an operational referendum, so if you decide to ask the community to tax higher for operational things, at the same time, the board can say, we don't want to keep taxing higher than our bare minimum for debt payment anymore. So there is some movement ability because you have used this defeasance strategy. So we do have some movement in there. And so it doesn't allow you to take the money in your pocket and use it different, but it does give you some mill rate. If this, not that.
changes in the taxpayers.
Correct.
Especially-
And that matters, right? Mm-hmm.
Especially if that note is like 1%, it's not really intelligent to, well, let's pay a bunch extra, you know?
Right.
The whole next step to that is if we pay some off early, then we get funded from the state more the next year. So it's all
It's a weird game.
Yeah.
Questions about the recommendations? Any others?
I don't have any further.
Make a motion to accept the budget
Recommendations.
recommendations.
Second.
So like all of them is what you're saying?
Well, we've already accepted
We've already
ones.
accepted
The ones without intent,
Right.
right?
There's
So
no
1B, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I'm sorry, there's no 11.
Okay, it's not like a secret.
I'm
Not-
sorry, that's my fault.
He doesn't like 11.
Yes, the ones that, so I move to accept 1B and then 12 through 19 recommendations.
Just clarifying, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
And did we have this?
Alex, second.
I second.
Alright, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget recommendations. Any further debate? Seeing how we proceed to vote, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you for your faith in the administrative recommendation. I hope you recognize that none of those reductions come easily. That is hours and hours and hours of us sitting in a room trying to contemplate and weigh pros and cons, go back and do some research and come back again. So thank you for that.
And renumber and not number them right.
So
Miss 11.
I'm not sure that was critical.
All right, moving on to 9.3 Policy Committee, first reading of policies. 1213, 3213, 4213, student supervision and welfare, 8462, child abuse and neglect.
All right, so those 3 policies all move together. If you recall, when we transitioned to Neola as our policy resource, they separated out each of the employee groups. So the 1000s are administrative policies, 3000s are professional staff, and the 4000s are support staff. So those policies are essentially the same. It's just which of the groups that they are referring to. So I included the policy language in your packet. The reason this changed was due to the state of Wisconsin making the law the anti-grooming behavior. Grooming has been added to the mandatory reporting requirements that all school district employees are required to complete. So that means there will be some mandatory training in the fall for all staff before they come back. But we had to update our policies to reflect what grooming is and what it is not. We had some really great conversation at the policy committee meeting, as well as we've had our employee handbook meeting, and so we went through the language with the staff that came to the handbook language. And I'm going to be honest with you, there was a lot of discussion about, would you mind opening just one of the policies, Brandon? I don't care which one. There's a long list that they included as any behavior that lacks a clear educational, perfect, it's after the boundary invasions. You gotta make that a lot bigger if you're possible. So appropriate staff and student relationships, if you want to scroll down. There you go. There we go. Okay, that section with all of this big list. It says any behavior that lacks a clear education or medical justification or that serves the emotional or physical needs of the adult rather than the student is strictly prohibited. Such behaviors may be indicators of grooming and will be subject to immediate investigation. Inappropriate boundary invasions may include but are not limited to the following grooming behavior. So we kept talking about this is a rule for all of our buildings, and if you walk into Forest Street and refuse a hug from every student that comes up to you, they're going to wonder what's wrong with you and what they did wrong and why you're so mean is what's going to happen. If you walk into the high school and start hugging students, they're also going to wonder what's wrong with you and why you continue that. So it is difficult to come up with language that is going to be consistent K-12, but the phrase that we continue to highlight was the paragraph up above when it says, or that serves the emotional or physical needs of the adult rather than the student. So if the adult is upset and needs a hug, that's unacceptable. That is serving the adult's needs. A child who is distraught and needs assistance, that is serving the needs of the student. And so it forces you to get at the motivation of why something happens. Just putting a list is not going to work for everyone. The other piece that we had a lot of conversation about, if you would mind scrolling down, there's
the very last thing.
Keep scrolling. Right here, this one. So in some communities, it might be very clear to draw a really hard line between what is appropriate for a teacher to engage in conversation with a student about and what is not. Some will say you will never text a student. We're in a rural community and we have some high school students who babysit for some of our staff members or who dog sit for them, or whatever it may be. There are times that there are interactions between staff and students that don't meet that criteria up above, but the policy itself had a paragraph that said outside district and staff parent relationships, and it basically says the policy permits appropriate interactions from legitimate pre-existing non-district relationships. So Casey and I knew each other well before we had this working relationship as a superintendent and board, and this is saying that relationship existed before the district, so it's okay. hypothetically, right? So it says staff who are parents or guardians of enrolled students must maintain professional conduct in all school-related activities, avoiding favoritism or conflicts of interest. Where such relationships compromise professional responsibilities, the district may intervene. I added the word students in the top, so outside district and staff parent/student relationships, to try to get at that. It's a relationship that you have with that student, but it's outside of your role with the district. I'm not sure how else to craft the language to make it okay for you to text a student and say, can you watch my house? I'm gone this weekend, or whatever it is, neighbors or anything like that. So that was a sticky point that the staff that came to the handbook committee really wanted some clarity on, because nobody wants to be accused of grooming when they are maintaining family friendships that have existed long before. Questions, comments, concerns about that?
You did mention this in the policy committee, but right at the very bottom of this is a very scary statement that says there will be very harsh penalties if there is any attempt at an internal investigation before immediately reporting out to the parent on any accusation of this stuff. Which means A, you're going to have the ability to accuse somebody of something and immediately have the school having to contact their parent with no internal verification of the veracity of it. Is that something we can do? Is that something we cannot do? How does that work?
That was absolutely the point of the law, that we cannot not tell a parent about the accusation until we feel comfortable, right?
Yep.
And so it says staff required reporting of misconduct. Any concerns about inappropriate staff student conduct must be reported immediately to a supervisor, principal, or the district compliance officer. Anonymous reports will be investigated per district harassment procedures. And I think earlier it talks about notification to the parent must happen within
by 5 o'clock.
At first so that part legislation is reconsidering a bit. Let's just for a second live in the world of social media. So an accusation is made about a staff member. Maybe it has some merit. Maybe it's a student that's just really angry at that teacher, makes that accusation. If we are required to report that to the parent before we get to do any investigation, that teacher is going to be crucified on social media before we've ever even had the opportunity to ask a question about it. So I know that part is being sent back to the legislature to consider rephrasing, but right now, as it stands, that would need to be reported. I think it says by the end of the work day or something like that is what exists. So I'm hopeful that it will change.
What I was asking is, do we have any other policies that contradict that?
We do not.
Okay.
We do not. Like we have a harassment policy, but this trumps that. This tells us that we must report on this. As soon as it falls into the mandatory reporter category.
As long as it's clear cut and there's no, because I was under the impression that we maybe had some other like required to investigate claim.
Yeah.
Routes.
Not when it comes to anti-grooming behaviors. Yeah. So those are the policies, and then the child abuse and neglect, the only change in that policy was a reference to the anti-grooming law, and so that policy was updated to include that new language. Those are the updates from the policy committee. We had a very lengthy conversation about an anti-hate speech policy, and battled with the topic, the same as every other school that has tried to develop a policy around that. And we ended with, I was going to craft some possible language to include in handbooks as opposed to a standalone policy. What is most important? So staff handbooks and student handbooks, our athletic handbook, they all come to the board for approval in either June or July. And once the board has approved them, they act as board policy. So whether we write a standalone policy or it's embedded in the handbook, once the board has approved it, it has the same weight as a board policy. So that language will be forthcoming. There wasn't a big enough gap from policy committee to tonight's meeting to get that for you tonight.
This is first reading, right?
Correct.
Good.
That's all I have.
All right. Moving on to 10.1. March meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the March meeting minutes.
I'll second that. Any debate? Seeing none, we should vote. All in favor of approving the March meeting minutes, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. 10.2, District Administrator Report.
I will try to be quick because I feel like I've been talking at you a ton. The survey is live, as we talked about briefly. School Perception sends me a message each week with how many surveys have been completed. Based on the size of our community, they believe a response rate of 500 surveys will be predictive of the results. And today I got an update. We have 300 completed surveys already, so that's fantastic. And we still have another week and a half of them being out. So just so everyone knows, students and staff and families were all families of students, sorry, not the kids themselves, you have to be able to vote. We're all emailed a copy of the survey, mailed, every postal box holder received one, plus Marty has a large stack of them because they each have a unique code on them, so a code can only be used one time. If you hear of anybody, we are encouraging in a household, all of the voters should fill out their own survey. So if you hear of anybody that they're looking for a copy, they can just call Marty and she can either give them a new paper copy or she can give them a code so they can go to the website and type in the new unique code that she has. So we want to highly encourage participation, but at 500 they consider it to be predictive. I was going to update you about the Sheriff's Department. It was really intended to be about the SRO, School Resource Officer contract, but then segued into the truancy discussion, and we've already talked about that. May, the board usually schedules a meeting for the first week in May to do board reorganization. And so perhaps when the meeting is over, the two of you could stay and you guys could pull out your calendars and we could pick a day for the first week in May to do the officer elections so that we know who's in charge when it comes to our May regularly scheduled board meeting. And there is an elementary family night coming up next Wednesday that we are in need of workers for. So if there's any board members interested, who has the sign up?
I sent everybody an email with our flyer, and you can reach out to myself or Jason or Kristen if you are interested in volunteering or attending.
Perfect, thank you very much. That is all that I have.
Alright, moving on to 10.3, WASB and other conferences, workshops.
I sent that email about the 5 workshop series. I was not sure if that was something the board was interested in doing. If you want to just get the links and do it yourself, if you want to do it as a group, I'm wide open for either or.
It looked interesting, but it's just
tough.
I'm realizing how little like a doctor's schedule and an educator's schedule makes, like at all. Like your conferences are weird times and stuff. So it's like noon to 12:30 on a weekday.
Yeah. They send the video recordings, so that could certainly happen after the fact.
I'd be very interested, at least in personally doing it, just not
Perfect.
from noon to 12:30.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same
Fine with this. Send us a link and let us watch.
Okay, will do. Freddie, can you help me get them registered for that 5-part series?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Alright, conference workshop attendance. I guess one thing I can think of is on the 23rd of April, the new board gathering at CISA 4.
And that does not work for our new board members, but they usually send out the slide deck after that, and so I said that I would share that out with them as well. And if the topics covered there are also covered in that 5-part video series, so.
Sure. School board connection opportunities. Just a couple coming up would be the spring banquet, May 6th, and graduation on the 22nd of May.
Yes. This is the first time we've gotten out of the end of the school year in May in a really long time.
Yeah. Any other action opportunities?
Yes, there's going to be a ton of stuff that'll come
Yeah,
up.
May's crazy.
I don't know if it counts as a connection opportunity. There's the Taste Fest. Pouring at Taste Fest.
Second.
If somebody wants me to pour it for them.
Alright, future agenda items?
Just one.
Just one.
This budget 25-26, this paper, budget hearing, annual meeting, we met on Landa Center. So page number 16, which says that we have $109 million budget. So Brandon will study it and will talk in the future, next month.
Same thing was mentioned earlier.
Right, Brandon?
Yes, sir.
Page number 16.
Sure. Alright, any other future?
8.6, the possible retention policy, as well as language on handbook language on hate speech.
Okay. Guess we'll do school board. Right, the school board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85 LB C and F for the purpose of concerted employment of public employees. Roll call? Or, yeah, roll call.
Alexander Woods.
Yes.
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 Casey Weiss.
One of these days.
Yes.
Nick Halstead.
Yes.
Iftikhar Memon.
Yes.
And Caitlin Cunningham.
Yes.
Could you please give us 6 minutes break?